What's up, guys? We're back with another Star Wars Black Series review, taking a look at the latest entry in, well, two things. So we've got the next Bad Batch member, but we've also got the latest Deluxe Black Series figure as well. So of course that means we're taking a look at Wrecker from the Bad Batch. He is a deluxe figure, again, so he does come in a larger format box, but of course it's still the same sort of trapezoidal thing that we're doing these days. So you've got him there in the window with all of his accessories. He's got that sort of dark red banding for the Bad Batch, and then you've got a shot of him that runs along the spine to line up with the other figures so far, and then the back of the box has got a larger shot of that artwork, as well as a tiny little bio for him, as we are used to. So let's do it. Let's pull him out and take a look. And here we go, out of the package, our Deluxe Wrecker figure, so getting us one step closer to completing our Bad Batch crew. And I have really been looking forward to this guy, and I think that I'm being pretty well rewarded because, frankly, I think this is a pretty solid figure in just about every respect. I'm really digging just about everything going on here. So let's see what he can do, see how he moves around. There's not really going to be any surprises on this figure in terms of articulation. It's very much just a bigger version of what we are getting these days. So to start with, we've got our head, and it's actually kind of locked down at the peg. There's not a lot of room there, but the neck is so mobile that it really doesn't matter. So in concert, I suppose, you can get him to look up. He looks down. You've got really good tilt. And then, of course, you've got full rotation there as well. Arms go out at the shoulders. They will rotate. You do have the armor pad to contend with, so you've got to watch that. There is a butterfly joint in there. We do not have bicep swivel, but we've got elbow rotation. So you've got that there with the deep single cut, so it's better than 90, but it is a single jointed elbow. And then we've got hinges and rotation at the wrist. We've got our diaphragm cut, so he goes all the way around. So it's your rotation, it's your tilts, it's your backward, it's your forward, it's all in one. Legs go out about that far. They kick forward all the way. They do kick backwards quite a bit, actually. You've got a thigh cut up there, which is hidden really well by the armor. We've got our single jointed knee, goes back about that far. It does rotate, so it can move there. And then you've also got your hinge, which is super good on the back kick and still pretty good on the front. And then you've got a really good rocker down there as well. So Wrecker is about as articulated as any other figure. His size really is not hindering him in any way. The only area, again, that I think is even remotely locked down is the head. It just doesn't have a lot of clearance at that peg, but with how the neck works, it really makes no difference. Everything else moves really nicely. You can get him posed without much fuss. Aesthetically, I'm also really happy with this guy. He is the third figure in the Bad Batch that I've got because I don't have that newer wave that has tech yet. But this is my favorite figure in the Bad Batch so far. I'm really happy with the way Wrecker looks. I do think after, kind of getting him and messing around with the other two, I do think that maybe he is a little on the short side. Maybe he's not as tall as he should be, but he makes up for that in bulk, and I'll do a comparison with Crosshair and Hunter here in a bit, but I think he might be a little on the short side, just a tad. Otherwise, I think the bulk and the overall heft and mass of this figure is noticeable, and it's a different kind of trooper compared to the other figures. He's got a much bigger, more barrel chest, and I think he just looks fantastic. The sizing, the scaling of his overall body, his proportions, I think looks really good. So he's not, too top heavy, he's not too leggy or anything like that. Tons of battle damage on this figure, lots of nicks and gouges and cuts, and then you've got all of these sort of silver dry brushing in various spots on the chest, on the shoulder pad, which of course has our skull on it. You've got the red accents and like the piping that runs down, kind of showing that their armor's getting a little worn and kind of worse for wear in some ways. He does have his monster sheath down here on his shin, and this thing is humongous. I mean, it's massive, but it does house a very large knife that we'll talk about here shortly. And then you've got maybe something that is and sort of isn't an accessory is, of course, the backpack, a very hallmark item for the Bad Batch members. They all seem to have one, and it's always a different thing, but there's his. A lot of sculpt and detail on that, lots of nicks and cuts and gouges, a lot of red accents as well, and we'll talk about that more here in a minute. But I really think the big thing for this figure is just that. His bigness, his girth. He's really, really beefy and thick and kind of stodgy. And that's really what it comes down to, where I think he might be a little bit on the short side. I do think his overall shelf presence is going to be very noticeable in comparison to regular stormtroopers, clone troopers, and then the other Bad Batch members. So I'm really happy with him overall. I'm certainly happy that despite the fact we have to pay more for this guy, I'm glad he wasn't just crammed into a regular box with hardly any accessories and just made a regular guy. He does have a little bit more to him, a little bit more meat, and overall I think he's done really well when it comes to the overall sculpt and paint detail. And again, he is my favorite figure thus far, and a lot of that for me is definitely going to be this head sculpt because it's so different. I mean, I have seen some folks paint this up and do some custom work on his massive scar, which does make a night and day difference on this thing. And I'm not that kind of guy. I don't have that skill or really the time, so I don't worry about it too much. And I think I'm really happy with the way he is just out of the box. He's got that sort of smarmy smirk on his face. We've got the one sort of damaged eye that's missing a pupil, and then the other eye is really clean and crisp and centered. Photo printing is all nicely done on this, and it's just a really good, more realistic likeness of this particular clone, and I'm really happy with it. Just like I like the other two, this one is just as good, and in many ways I think is a better representation of a realistic approach to an animated head sculpt. Now, as far as accessories goes, Wrecker is pretty well stacked. He's got some things like, say, the backpack, which maybe isn't necessarily an accessory like I've already talked about, but he's got 4 different items, which for a Black Series figure is honestly a decent amount, for better or worse. So we'll start with the helmet because, well, it's kind of the big thing. So it is, of course, a removable piece. Just sort of sits over top of his dome there, and you can pop it on. I do think it's sized pretty well. I have seen somebody with a custom helmet already that makes this one kind of seem like it's a little short in some ways. But as far as what's in this box, like, I'm perfectly happy with this, and I think it looks good. It doesn't hinder his articulation. It doesn't get in the way of anything. It's not misshapen in the box in the way that Boba Fett's was, and I think it just looks good. Colors are nice and vibrant. The whites are really stark white. All of the sort of dingy and drab paintwork looks really good on him as well. And despite the fact that I do really love the head sculpt underneath this, I think I'll probably be using this quite a bit because it is just a cool looking helmet. He does have the sort of standard blaster. This is the same one that we saw with Hunter, so nothing too crazy there, no paint on it, but good sculpt. It's a little bit unique, it's a little bit more different. And then we've also got his big knife here, which, you know, as I mentioned, was able to be stored in the sheath, the monster sheath that's down there on his ankle or his shin. But this thing looks really good. He can hold it well, specifically in his left hand because that's not the trigger finger hand. And you've got a nice shiny metallic blade on there as well, with, of course, kind of like this saw blade on the back. And then again, here is the backpack, which maybe not an actual accessory because you're kind of always going to be using it, I'm sure, but it does look good, since that's another thing for these guys, is that they've all got a backpack of some kind. And there's a lot of markings on there. You've got the skull on there as well, and a lot of etchings and sort of pock marks and battle damage and just nicks and gouges that kind of pick up the light. But the red accents, of course, make it pop as well. So he's got a decent amount of stuff. I mean, I'm pretty happy with his spread here. You've got a knife, you've got a gun, you've got a backpack, and a removable helmet, which, frankly, even though he is a deluxe figure, is still on the high side when it comes to piece count for a Black Series figure. And then, like I mentioned, here he is alongside the other 2 members of the Bad Batch that I currently have. You know, Tech notwithstanding, I don't have him yet, but we've got Crosshair on the left and you've got Hunter on the right. And at first, I think it might be a little difficult to really see the size difference. He is slightly taller than both of them. Crosshair's helmet is a little bit bigger. It sort of sits up a little higher, so it seems like he's taller than Hunter, but he's not really all that different. He is definitely, you know, like half a head almost. I think he should maybe be like 3/4 of a head higher, give or take. So I could be wrong. It's just sort of my perception on the sizing of these guys. But I think the real big impression you're going to get is just how different he is from a broadness perspective, and then like a thickness. He is a lot more barrel-chested, a lot broader at the shoulders, and then of course at the waist as well. These guys sort of cinch in a little bit, but he's very tree trunkish, and you're going to see a huge difference in terms of overall proportions from limbs to chest, etc. when it comes to how he is constructed. Everything is just a little bit bigger on him in all accounts. He's a little bit taller and he's a little bit beefier, so everything has to be accentuated to make up for that, just due to the physics of the character and the figure. So while he's not super massive, there is going to be a noticeable difference in his size when you line him up next to the other guys. So yeah, I'm really happy with Wrecker. I think he is a very solid entry in the Black Series in general, but when it comes to building the Bad Batch as a team, this is the one I was really looking forward to the most, just because he is so different from the rest, because he's abnormally large. He's not huge, again, but he is abnormally large by comparison, and it's nice to get these figures that don't fit into the same Black Series mold as all the rest. Everybody is roughly around the same kind of size, but Wrecker is a little bit different in a number of ways, and I think for the most part, they did a really good job here. I love the head sculpt. I love the accessories he comes with. Sculpt, paint is really nicely done, and he just looks fantastic alongside his brothers. So that's going to do it for this look at the Star Wars Black Series Deluxe Wrecker. Let me know what you guys think. Feel free to like, comment, subscribe, and share, and until next time.